Dear friends, English Literature, Introduction to Drama, The Lion and the Jewel by Old Shwenka. Brief questions with answers. Brief questions 151 to 200. Question 151. When do the prisoners hear a bull roar? Answer. Immediately after the disappearance of Baroka and his henchmen, the prisoners' workers suddenly hear a bull roar. Question 152. What is a bull roarer? Answer. A bull roarer is a perforated piece of wood which is strung around the head to make a noise. Question 153. What terrifies the workers? Answer. The continuous bull roarer terrifies the workers. Question 154. Why do the workers flee from the scene? Answer. The continuous bull roarer terrifies the workers and they flee from the scene except the surveyor. Question 155. Who does not flee in spite of continuous bull roarer? Answer. The white surveyor does not flee in spite of continuous bull roarer. Question 156. What does Baroka do when the surveyor is alone? Answer. When the surveyor is alone, Baroka enters with his attendants. He bribes the surveyor with a calabash bowl through a young girl. Question 157. What is the surveyor's reaction to the bribe at first? Answer. At this, the surveyor gets angry and threatens them. Question 158. What do Baroka and his attendants do when the surveyor threatens them? Answer. When the surveyor threatens them, they persuade him to open the gift. Question 159. What does the surveyor find when he opens the gift? Answer. When he opens the gift, he finds a wad pile of pound notes and cola nuts. Question 160. What does the surveyor do when he is bribed with a wad pile of pound notes and cola nuts? Answer. The bribes fall short of his expectation. Rubbing his chin, he shakes his head in disagreement. Question 161. What does Baroka do when the surveyor shakes his head in disagreement? Answer. Baroka then offers him more money, a coop building of handsome goat. Question 162. What do the surveyor say when he is fully persuaded by the bribes? Answer. When he is fully persuaded, he says that he has made a mistake. The rail track should be laid much farther away because the art of illusion lay is unsuitable to support the weight of a railway engine. Question 163. Why does Baroka bribe the white surveyor? Answer. Baroka bribes the white surveyor to stop laying railway tracks because he wants to keep the villagers aloof from civilization. Question 164. How does Baroka foil the building of railway through illusion lay? Answer. Baroka foils the building of railway through illusion lay by bribing the white surveyor with a wad pile of pound notes, cola nuts, a coop building of hens and goat. Question 165. Why does Baroka want to keep the villagers aloof from civilization? Answer. According to Lecuno, Baroka wants to keep the villagers aloof from civilization because of his love of life. If the village is modernized, he will not be able to exercise his power and to satisfy his lust for any girl in the village. Question 166. What kind of life is Baroka leading? Answer. He is leading a life of power and sexuality. Question 167. Who is the voluptuous beast? Answer. Lecuno calls Baroka the voluptuous beast. Question 168. Why does Lecuno call Baroka the voluptuous beast? Answer. Lecuno calls Baroka a voluptuous beast because he bears progress to gratify his beastly nature. Question 169. Who is Aileto? Answer. Aeletto is the current favorite, the youngest of his wives of Baroka. Question 170. Who is plucking Baroka's hairs from his armpit? Answer. His current favorite Aeletto is plucking his hairs from his armpit. Question 171. How does Baroka react to the rejection of his proposal? Answer. When Baroka hears the news from Sadiko that Sidi has rejected his proposal of marriage on the grounds that he is much too old for her, he is enraged. Question 172. What list does Baroka make of his recent feats of bravery and strength? Answer. In a fit of anger, he lists his recent feats of strength and bravery, that he has defeated the man in the long tossing match at the Festival of Rain. He has fearlessly killed the leopard and the boar at night to save the farmer's goats, etc. Question 173. What is the Festival of Rain? Answer. It is a rain-making festival celebrated at the height of the dry season. It indicates the importance of rain to an agricultural people. Question 174. What does Baroka boast of? Answer. He boasts of his physical strength and capability of having sex. Question 175. What does Baroka tell Sadiko about his sex ability? Answer. In sexual intercourse, he says the sexual desire of the strongest of his wives will be satisfied long before his own. Question 176. What does Baroka want to teach Sidi? Answer. Sidi is younger with no knowledge of sexuality of an old man. He wants to teach her a lesson if he gets a chance. If he is given a chance, he will show her how sexually active he is. Question 177. Why does Baroka want to teach Sidi a lesson? Answer. As Sidi rejects his proposal of marriage on the grounds of his old age, he wants to teach her a lesson. He wants to show her how sexually active he is. Question 178. What secret does Baroka reveal to Sadiko? Answer. Baroka reveals to Sadiko that he has lost his manhood and he has discovered it about a week ago. Question 179. At what age did Baroka's grandfather father two sons? Answer. His grandfather fathered two sons at 65. Question 180. At what age did Baroka's father produce female twins? Answer. His father Okiki produced female twins at 67. Question 181. Why does Baroka request Sadiko not to reveal his importance? Answer. Sadiko is a loose-tongued woman. Baroka pretends that he has lost his manhood and requests Sadiko not to reveal it so that she reveals it. Question 182. Why does Baroka want to publicize his false importance? Answer. Baroka wants to publicize his false importance so that he can trap Sidi. Question 183. What was the name of Baroka's father? Answer. The name of Baroka's father is Okiki. Question 184. What is Sadiko's victory dance? Answer. Sadiko's victory dance is solo, performed alone, performed around the carving of the bell Baroka. Question 185. What does Sadiko celebrate in her victory dance? Answer. In her victory dance, Sadiko celebrates Baroka's importance. Question 186. How does Sadiko celebrate Baroka's importance? Answer. Sadiko celebrates Baroka's importance by dancing around the carved figure of Baroka in front of a tree at the village center. Question 87. Who was the first husband of Sadiko? Answer. Baroka's father, Okiki, was her first husband. Question 188. How was Sadiko when Okiki married her? Answer. When he married her, she was the youngest and freshest of all wives. of his wives. Question 89. Why could not Okiki consummate his marriage to Sadiko? Answer. He could not consummate the marriage because he was sexually inactive at the time. Question 190. What happened when Sadiko invited Okiki to have sex with her? Answer. When she invited him to have sex with her, he came at her like a snake, but being failed to have sex with her, he went back in shame like a rag. Question 191. Why does Sadiko take pleasure from the importance of man? Answer. Sadiko takes pleasure from the importance of man because she thinks when men lose their sexual strength, they become puppets at the hands of women. Question 192. How are, according to Sadiko, men defeated by women? Answer. She thinks when men lose their sexual strength, they become puppets at the hands of women. Thus, men are defeated by women at the end. Question 193. How does Sadiko gloat over the importance of man? Answer. She gloats over it and begins to dance around the tree, singing, "Take warning, masters, we will squash you in the end." Question 194. How does Sadiko pass the information of Baroka's importance to Sidi? Answer. When Sadiko is celebrating Baroka's importance, Sidi enters the scene and wants to know what Sadiko is celebrating. Sadiko makes her promise not to reveal the secret to anybody and tells her in a whisper that Baroka has lost his manhood. Question 195. How does Sadiko appear to be a comic figure in her victory dance? Answer. Sadiko appears to be a comic figure in her victory dance because she cannot imagine that Baroka is actually not important. Question 196. What does Sidi decide to do when she learns from Sadiko that Baroka is important? Answer. Thinking that Baroka is really important, Sidi decides to go to his palace and mock him. Question 197. How does Sadiko warn Sidi when she decides to mock Baroka? Answer. Sadiko warns Sidi that Baroka is very cunning like a fox. Question 198. How does Lekunal warn Sidi when she decides to mock Baroka? Answer. Lekunal warns her of Baroka's savagery. Question 199. Why does Lekunal try to dissuade Sidi from going to torment Baroka? Answer. Lekunal tries to dissuade her from going to torment Baroka because Baroka is a savage and his behavior is morally unacceptable. He will never lose a chance to beat a helpless woman. He gets it. Question 20. What is Sakabula? Answer. It is a kind of oil lamp. I repeat it. What is Sakabula? It is a kind of oil lamp. Thank you friends for watching my video.